So, Russia. Not a country we're typically talking about in, like, the sympathetic sense ever since the invasion of Ukraine, due to the fact that currently the oligarchical government of Russia is launching a full-scale invasion on the sovereign nation of Ukraine, a former Soviet satellite nation that is kind of like, it is adjacent to multiple NATO ally nations, and is itself like a barely kinda honorary NATO allied nation. And so it's just been this whole thing. And on top of that, the Russian military has been quite indiscriminate in their attacking of civilians, especially earlier on in the war when the Ukrainian front wasn't quite so organized and armed and hadn't pushed the Russians back quite so much, and there were still civilians in a lot of these areas being attacked. There were countless videos of Russian tanks running over cars with women and children in them, blowing up apartment buildings that had people filming inside of them. In fact, a friend of mine, Dylan Burns, has been shelled by Russians twice in Ukraine. I'm not joking. The fucking Doofenshmirtz meme. If I had a time for every time my friend, who is a non-armed, non-combatant journalist who was doing, like, journalistic and, like, aid work, rescuing animals and shit in Ukraine, got shelled by the Russians, and then the Russian propaganda outlets proceeded to claim that they were a militaristic unit that they attacked, and that they didn't attack journalists afterwards. I'm not even joking, by the way. Not only did they fucking shell Dylan, but then the Russian military's propaganda account went on to justify the shelling of Dylan and that crew, despite none of them being armed combatants, by claiming that they were secretly armed combatants. So yeah. And Dylan has had to run for cover many times. I'm talking about the times where Dylan literally got shelled and people in his group had to be taken back to medical tents and have their lives saved. There was a British journalist that he was friends with that was with him in the first shelling that he received, and the guy got shrapnel in his stomach. Like, Dylan barely missed getting hit by shrapnel. The shell hit so close. There's a video on Twitter on his account. I could go on about this. Russia has been very indiscriminate in its attacking of civilians, but this is a very different story. We're not talking about Russians attacking Ukrainian civilians. We're talking about terrorists, supposedly connected to ISIS, attacking Russian civilians at a concert venue just the other day. This has been pretty big news. Suspects in deadly concert hall attack facing life imprisonment. Here's what we know. I'm going to read this, but first I'm going to give like a very brief description of the video of the shooting that I saw. It was captured on video by some either stupid, brave, or both guy who pulled out a phone camera on top of this board, like this catwalk, that overlooked the floor of the concert venue by like maybe 50 feet. Low enough that if the guys below who were shooting up the crowd on the like ground floor saw the guy up there recording, they totally could have turned their guns up at him and just shot him. But he was just like fucking Batman up there just recording this crime, like up high, not being noticed by the dudes down below, and they're just firing on people who are huddled up against the wall. And it's pretty gruesome video. I don't recommend watching it. You know, it's one of those situations where you're like, ah, man, I forgot how fucked up real life violence is, you know? Because, like, in movies, someone gets shot and they just kind of go limp and they're instantly dead, but when you see real-life shootings, they're almost always still alive for a while afterwards. So it's a crowd of people who have been shot who are still writhing afterwards. Like, they're not... the shooters walk away to go shoot more people, and most people laying on the ground are still moving around despite being shot. So it's just like... it's not pleasant. Don't watch it. Don't watch it. I don't recommend it. I know it's very tempting. I know. Don't recommend it. All 4 suspects in the Crocus City Concert Hall. That is, I don't know why, but a surprisingly un-Russian name in my perception. I don't know. Concert hall attack case have been remanded into pre-trial detention until May 22nd, the Moscow City Court said via Telegram. You know, this is one of the few cases where it's kind of nice that Russia has such a brutal criminal justice system. These guys are going to be tortured, and then they are going to be executed. Like, in a very brutal fashion. They're gonna have, like, nails. They're gonna have, like, spikes shoved under their fingernails, and, like, a hot iron, like, put into their mouths, or, like, coals shoved down their throats or something. Like, the Russians are gonna torture and kill these guys for what they did. Like, they're actual... Like, they got them. Like, they're it's not going to be good. We know what the Wagner group does to their, like, prisoners who are, like, foreign combatants. What do you think Putin's regime is going to do to these terrorists they've captured? Oh, yeah. Their cocks and balls got cut off yesterday, okay? They got castrated days ago. They got castrated on the way to the jail. The defendants were brought to court individually on Sunday and pled guilty on all charges, according to state media agency TASS. There is no real criminal justice system in Russia, from what I've heard, so it's going to be a real quick, like, Starship Troopers style, arrested, tried, and executed all in the same day type deal. Probably in the same week. The names of the 4 accused in the case are... Not even going to try to pronounce that. Not even going to try to pronounce that. Not even going to try to pronounce that. Not even going to try to pronounce that one either. Yeah, none of them are even close to pronounceable by me. I'm not even going to try. And frankly, they don't deserve me trying because they murdered numerous innocent people. Moscow city courts announced via telegram. All 4 are from Tajikistan and have been in Russia on either temporary or expired visas. Ah, yes. Building the wall, though, that'll fix it. Friday's attack left at least 137 people dead. Jesus. The attack is Russia's deadliest in 2 decades. I would think with over 100 people shot dead, that would be the deadliest ever, but apparently not. The attack also came barely a week after Putin secured his 5th presidential term. The large-scale attack is damaging for a leader who portrays himself as someone able to guarantee order. I mean, Putin didn't really get elected. I mean, he's pretty popular there, but I also don't have much trust in the security of Russian elections when they do so much to disrupt the security of ours. Russian President Vladimir Putin declared Sunday a national day of mourning for the 137 victims of Friday's attack on Moscow Concert Hall. Authorities work to identify I am so sorry, guys. I can't keep myself from burping after I drink Monster. You know, the lion's gotta roar. Authorities work to identify victims. Procedures to identify those killed in the attack have begun. The city's Department of Health said, according to Russian state news agency RIA Novostoy. The Russian Investigative Committee said 62 bodies had been identified so far, adding that, quote, for the remaining victims, genetic examinations are being carried out to establish their identities. The investigation of the crime scene is ongoing, the statement said. Jesus Christ, it's so many, like, people dead. Probably hundreds more injured, just based off the video I saw. Putin held separate calls with his Turkish and Syrian counterparts, Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Bashar al-Assad, on Saturday and promised closer cooperation in fighting terrorism following the attack, according to a Kremlin readout. So he's getting together with his allies, obviously. Russian embassy says no warnings from U.S. The Russian embassy in Washington says it did not receive any warnings about a potential attack in Moscow from the U.S. Ambassador to the U.S. Anatoly Antonov told Russian state news agency RIA Novostoy Sunday. France has lifted its terror alert to its highest level following the deadly attack in Moscow, French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal said Sunday. But, I mean, okay, I guess. Kind of a weird connection, but weird that just France was like, holy shit, it's happening. We've got to go on high alert. Goddamn Frenchies. They raise the white flag as soon as there's even a sign of trouble. Nah, I don't feel like this is an inside job. Remember, the U.S., for all intents and purposes, The US is low-key kind of removing itself from presence in the Middle East compared to like pre 9/11 or like in the, sorry, not pre 9/11, in the post 9/11 era. Like we pulled out of Afghanistan. We've ended our faux wars we started post 9/11. Like pretty much the core of US quote-unquote occupation of the Middle East is our strong alliance with Saudi Arabia and Israel. Like those are pretty, like we've pulled out of Syria, where we were actually a pretty good, like a force of good. We pulled out of Afghanistan where we were a force of good. So what world superpower right now is having the greatest influence in a negative way on the Middle East right now? Russia. Russia and China are massively expanding into the Middle East and Africa to try and like build up their economy from those resources and those like routes of outsourcing. And so the imperialist behavior of Russia is just as bad, if not worse, than America. So the same type of behaviors that have justified in the minds of terrorists that have attacked America to do what they did, those same behaviors are being carried out by Russia now, way more than the US. So it's actually not that surprising to me that in the future, we might actually see like extremist Islamic terror kind of become more focused in Russia and China, more so than in the US. Because we're kind of pulling out. And it's mostly China and Russia that are doing the crazy imperialistic shit in Africa and the Middle East these days. China, especially in Africa. Tankies in shambles? Yeah, one of the biggest examples of how tankies have absolutely no fucking clue what they're talking about. Like, one of my favorite things is like the more I learn about politics, which I do. I learn something new about politics every single day doing this. The more I learn about politics, the more I realize that, particularly on the left, among those that like go against what I believe in, the reason they disagree is truly just a lack of like dedication to caring about politics. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, the hyper anti-voting lefties are literally just lazy, and it's the only reason they hold the position they have. They're just lazy, and they're too lazy to do like the bare minimum of research. It's why they repeat easy to debunk lies like AOC just recently called what's happening in Israel and Palestine a genocide. So you can kind of know that any debate with those people is going to be a layup if you're willing to do the bare minimum of effort of Googling the thing that you're going to be talking about with them, because you know for a fact they will not Google shit. They won't Google anything, they won't read anything, they won't research anything. It's all about their feelings and getting like farms on Twitter or whatever bubble they're in, and you just know for a fact you'll be able to steamroll them because they're too the only reason they disagree with the idea of voting in the first place is because they're lazy pieces of shit. I'm sorry, Asuka, but listen. You guys over in France, you gotta stop raising those white flags. What can I say?